Allowing someone to disrespect you is not weakness. I know this is going to kind of come as a shock to many of you guys, and you're going to disagree with this, but it's fine. But let me lay out this argument here and help you understand why this is the case, right? So frequently, what will happen is that I will get into conversations with people. And if you get in a conversation with me, it's pretty hard to get me upset, right? It's really difficult to do that. In fact, there's very few people that have ever been able to do that because I just don't. Because I don't place enough value in what's happening in that interaction in order to be upset. I let go of the ego portion when I'm talking or when I'm having a discussion with someone, that it doesn't faze me. It doesn't bother me. You can call me names. You can say things. You can be disrespectful. It's really not going to faze me. Now, it doesn't mean that I won't necessarily put a boundary into place in a certain situation and that I might not leave the conversation or whatnot. But in most cases, it doesn't really matter. Right. And again, it doesn't mean that you have to handle everything in a way that you're completely passive. Right. It doesn't mean that you always have to turn the other cheek. Like I said in the video, sometimes 10% of the time, maybe you need to punch someone in the face. But a majority of the time, what you have to realize is that a lot of people perceive allowing someone to disrespect you, for example, as weakness, when it indeed is not weakness. In fact, it is strength. Right. And the reason why it is strength is because it's not about whether someone disrespects you or not and how you handle that. It's about whether or not you are emotionally affected by it. And if you are emotionally affected by it, if they're able to push your button, that is actually the weakness versus the non-response is actually the strength. And it's the reverse of what most people think it is, honestly, right? And people will see that. They will see, oftentimes, I've been told, I've had an interaction with people and someone has watched it and has said to me, it appeared weak to me when you just allowed yourself to be disrespected. And I thought about that for a minute, and I was like, that's interesting. That's interesting that you have that viewpoint that me, quote, allowing myself to be disrespected is weak. Whereas, what did you want? Did you expect that I would have a violent reaction to the person, or I would yell back at them, or I would say, hey, stop disrespecting me, or don't talk to me like that? And then now I would be strong? That would make me strong? I think that's the reaction that most people have. Now, if you completely back down, if someone disrespects you and then you apologize and you act cowardly in response to that, sure, that's weakness. I agree with that. That's also reactive at the same time, right? But what I would make the argument to say is that non-reactivity is always strength and reactivity is always weakness, right? And that's why I'm so against the idea of anger. Is because anger is not a healthy emotion. It is not a helpful emotion. It does not, expressing anger at least, it never produces the desired result, right? As the Stoics talk about that, how much more grievous are the results of your anger than the causes of them, right? And so I thought this was just an interesting thing to talk about because I've dealt with this a lot of times and I've thought about this a lot because when people say this to me, and it's not to say that, look, I don't always just allow people to disrespect me, right? In the sense that that I don't always don't do anything about it, right? Many times, most of the time, I'm going to have some kind of a boundary, and if I don't want to talk to someone, if they're disrespecting me, then I'm going to just not talk to them. I'm just going to have the boundary, and if it's a relationship with a person that I value, then I would actually draw the boundary and tell them so that they have the opportunity and the knowledge to not violate that boundary and get to a point where I'm not going to talk to them. If it's a romantic relationship, obviously, then it is important, right? Your wife should respect you. Your girlfriend should respect you. If she doesn't respect you, then she's not going to be attracted to you. And so in that case, intervention is definitely required. You can't just stand there and take disrespect from a woman who you're in a relationship with because you will then sour the relationship in that direction. That will be weakness in that case. Now, again, being reactive to it is not the answer as well. Instead, it is to simply draw a clear boundary and then to act accordingly to that boundary, right? But when it comes to a random stranger, when it comes to a random person on the internet, when it comes to someone who doesn't matter, in most cases, you should just be non-reactive at all. You should not respond. It doesn't matter. And I know this is going to sound funny because I just did a video recently where I said 10% of the time you should punch someone in the face. And I still hold that to be true as well. Yeah, some of the time, you should have a non-reactive reaction, or we'll call it a response, where you calculate and do something that is extreme in order to balance it out so that people don't automatically assume that they can take advantage of you or that you're going to always choose a passive route, right? It creates a little bit of unpredictability and makes you so you're not a target. I'm not going to go into the whole depth of that in this video, but I wanted to explain that because there are a lot of nuances to this. But the primary thing here, again, we always focus about yourself, right? It is always about you. Is when are you allowing your ego to get in the way such that you make non-optimal moves in life because of something that has damaged your ego, but hasn't actually in effect damaged you or prevented you from your aims, right? So the way to live life, right, if you want to be as most successful as possible and have as less drama as possible, is to go after the objectives you have, to treat life as a game, and then only interact with or only intervene in the situations where someone is actively blocking your objective or preventing you from achieving your objective, right? And so, for example, if I'm walking down the street and some person on the street bumps into me and then starts calling me names, there's no reason for me to get involved in the situation. There's no reason for me to react to that at all or to even care that this person has done this. It's just what happened and I can just walk and move on. Right now, some people would say, well, that's cowardly. You're being weak. But is it really? Because this person's not interfering with my objective. Now, if someone blocks me, bumps into me, and then starts to threaten me or gets in my way, then sure, then I have to deal with it. And I might have to deal with that on a physical level. I might have to become violent in that case. But my point is that you don't necessarily need to do that. You certainly don't need to, quote, defend your honor. Now, defending someone else's honor is admirable, and it makes sense because it shows that you have a value for them, and that has value to that into the relationship, right? And another person might not be as emotionally mature as you, and so you are causing them to be or you are preventing them from being caused harm, right? Even though that harm, in effect, they cause themselves, but you are still preventing that. So what it really comes down to is just understanding that it doesn't matter what other people think. And when you are non-reactive in a way, when someone disrespects you, and then other people see that, and then they believe that you're weak, and then that affects your behavior, then you've become reactive, right? And you start caring what other people think about that, which is also not good. Then your ego is involved, then your emotions are involved, then you actually are being weak, right? So just because people perceive you as weak doesn't make you weak, right? It's you've often heard people say, don't mistake my kindness for weakness, right? Don't mistake my kindness or patience for weakness. And that's something that I find myself saying quite often, which again, a lot of times that's going to fall on deaf ears, which is fine, right? You don't have to convince people of this. You can know this, and that's all that really matters. But yeah, I thought this was an interesting topic because this has come up in various ways too. I think I did a shorter video where I said what to do if someone disrespects you, and I was basically like, nothing. There's no, who cares? It doesn't matter, and also the fact that you should respect people even if they disrespect you, because it's not about them. It's about you. It's about how you behave and the principles that you live by. Right now, again, I don't mean that you have to be in conversations with people who are disrespecting you. However, what I have found in many cases is that a lot of times I will be in a conversation with someone who has less emotional regulation than I do. They don't have the ability to master their emotions. And so in those cases, I could just cut the conversation just because they are unable to regulate their emotions and they're saying things that they shouldn't be saying. But in many cases, it's much more valuable if I'm just non-reactive and then they see that and they see that, wow, I'm yelling at this person or I'm saying these nasty things and they're just not reacting to it. They're just treating me with empathy even while I'm doing this, and sometimes that makes an impact on them, right? Or at the very least, it allows you to continue the conversation where you can actually make an impact on them and get through to them with your point. Whereas if you just cut the conversation immediately, that's not going to happen. So what I would say again from all of this is that the big lesson here is that just when you're in a conversation, when you're thinking about these things, when you're thinking about being disrespected, always think about why, right? Why does this matter? If it doesn't matter, then let it go. If it does matter, if there is an actual reason for this and there's actual consequences or things that are going to come of this, then obviously you have to deal with those situations. But you're going to find that a majority of situations in life, you really have to think about, they don't matter to you. And so you're getting involved in things that you shouldn't be involved in because they're not interfering with your objective. It's just like, have you ever played Connect 4? I'll leave you with this idea, okay? In Connect 4, right, you're either black or red, and you got to drop these little tokens down, and you're trying to get 4 diagonal or 4 across or 4 horizontal, right? And the thing with that game is that you can't be distracted by where someone's moving if it doesn't affect what you're trying to do. If you have 3 in a row, okay, and someone blocks you somewhere else where you had 2 in a row, you can just ignore that. Or if they're starting to build up and they have 2 in a row, but you have 3 in a row and you can get your 4th, ignore what they're doing, right? You can't be distracted by all of these things and then go and chase after them. Otherwise, you're not ever going to complete your objective. So focus on your objective. Don't focus on what other people are doing, and don't worry about being perceived as weak in many cases. Don't worry about someone disrespecting you. It doesn't really matter unless it does, and you know those specific situations, and let go of that stuff. And what you'll find is that you will be able to focus much better on what is actually important to you, and you'll become a much more patient person, and people will actually respect you for that. Even though some people might see what you're doing as weakness, as long as you can consistently apply that and be a person that is extremely tolerant and extremely patient, then it does set you apart from other people. If you want some help with masculinity, with being a man, with improving your life, with transforming yourself, please check out the Bulldog Mindset membership below. I'm really using that as the main thing to support the work that I'm doing here on this channel and in other medium. So I would really love to have you as part of the membership and part of that community as I'm working on increasing that and rebooting that and making it just an awesome place for personal development and personal transformation. I'll see you tomorrow.